Okay, so you've made the decision. You want to start creating content. You want to start building an audience and even grow an online business. Great. Making that decision, huge deal. Huge deal, for real. But now you've got the obvious next question. Okay, what's my first piece of content? Or maybe you've made some content and you're kind of feeling stuck and you're thinking, what's my next piece of content? I've got an answer for you that will help you map out probably your next several pieces of content. Plus, it'll give you one of the most wonderful things in the world, momentum. I cannot tell you how powerful momentum is. When you start to, it feels like you're at the top of the hill and you're just a little stone, and it takes a lot just to roll over once and then again. But slowly, this is a snowy hill, by the way, you start to pick up some speed, pick up some snow, and then you know how the rest goes. It grows and builds and becomes this almost unstoppable force. Yes, that's a little dramatic, but that really is what it feels like when you get into this space of having some momentum. You know what you're doing, and what you have done is working, and you know what you're about to do is also going to work, and it fuels you with motivation, it fuels you with more ideas, and it builds on itself and can last for months and years even if you do it right. So that's the goal here. Real quickly, who am I? Why should you listen to me? I've been making my living online from YouTube primarily through my online business, Home Studio Corner, for the last 15 years at this point. So I've got a lot of experience doing this, creating content that builds an entire business that generates a six-figure income for me and my family for many, many years. And I want to share my experiences with you. But first, before we dive in, what's your story? Do you have content already? Are you about to create content? Where are you in that journey? Leave a comment below and let me know. Okay, so here's the real bread and butter, nuts and bolts thing to think about when you're thinking about content for your niche, especially this first kind of batch of content that you want to create. If you are in a creative niche, really doesn't matter what niche it is, there's a certain amount of equipment and gear that people need. You need at least some sort of bare minimum setup to even get started doing the thing that you want to do. So for me, I come from the world of music and music production. If I own a guitar, not enough for me to get into music production. I need a few pieces of equipment just to be able to record, right? I need some software, I need some hardware, I need some microphones, cables, stand. There's a lot that goes into just having the bare minimum to get started, and then there's a whole list of kind of nice to haves that you get to eventually. And that's the case in almost any creative endeavor. If you want to get into woodworking, you're going to need some stuff that allows you to cut wood. You're going to need the wood itself, and there's lots of questions around that. So especially if you're early in this process, you may not realize that you're going to have people coming to you saying, hey, what do you recommend for blah? Insert this, computer, audio interface, microphone, whatever those things are in your niche. And chances are you have some good answers to that question. And of course, we want to help people one-on-one as best we can. But ideally, let's help them with our content, because if one person has that question, there are 1,000 others that have that same question. So the idea here is we're going to create a series of content around your recommendations for equipment, around what I would call the necessities for your niche. This is how I started with Home Studio Corner. That's my first business. The very first thing I created was a series of blog posts and eventually videos called 12 Home Studio Necessities. So there were kind of 12 broad categories of stuff that people needed to get into home recording. It was the bare minimum. It was the starting point. You can't do anything until you have these things. So it makes sense if you're going to be talking about this niche, you're looking to be some sort of a leader in this niche, it makes sense that you've got a resource for people who haven't really gotten into it yet. Yes, if they already have all that stuff, they won't be interested in that specific recommendation because they already have all the things they need to get started. They just want you to teach them how to do it. But a lot of people don't. Or maybe they have one or two of the necessities, but they don't have 3, 4, and 5 that they really need to get started. You can be that person that gives them some guidance in the midst of a world where there are, I would assume, in every niche, millions of things they could buy. Which ones should they buy? That's where you and your content comes in. Now, real quickly, I'm going to share with you specifically how I would go about making that series of content. And there's a really cool added bonus that comes on the end once you've made all of this that is takes everything to the next level and again kind of ties into that momentum piece we talked about earlier. Okay, so we're going to get to that in just a moment. All right, so how do we get started with this? You probably already have some sort of a list. If not, pull out a piece of paper and start writing out a list of kind of the broad categories of the stuff that people need kind of start to finish to do the thing that you teach. So for me, that starts with things like a microphone. There's a thing called an audio interface, which is like a USB device that plugs into the computer that connects things like microphones, headphones, and speakers into the computer. There's software. There's specific types of speakers that you need, specific types of cables, stands. There's a whole lot involved. So just make the big, not specific pieces of equipment yet, just the big broad categories. And once you have those, kind of figure out how to break it down into the most understandable chunks. So if you come out with like 20 lists of categories, that's probably too many. Arguably 12 was too many for me. In the years since, I've actually honed it down to 5. My current gear list is 5 home studio necessities. And then I also have some nice to haves as well. So there's the must haves and the nice to haves. So if you find yourself with a plethora of categories and it feels like too much, maybe split it into 2. What are the ones they have to do the thing? So if you're teaching painting, what are the essential paints, brushes, canvas, stuff that they need just to be able to get started following your instructions? Because if they can't get started, what's the point? And maybe they have the brushes, but they didn't know they need that stuff to put on the paper so that they can begin painting. Because why would they know? Because no one taught them yet. You can be the person that teaches them. They'll love you forever for it. So figure out what that list is. And once you have that list of kind of broad categories, hopefully, ideally, I'd say somewhere between 5 to 10, that list of categories now becomes your list of videos that you're going to create. And you can create them one at a time, one video about that specific general topic, and then within that video, you can get into your specific recommendations, okay? And within those recommendations, here's where it gets kind of interesting. You can include affiliate links to purchase said items. So chances are, if nothing else, you can use Amazon's affiliate program, but maybe there's a retailer in your space that sells this and has an affiliate program set up. You can have those links in the description of the video to help them find the exact thing that you're looking for. Now, the goal here isn't to make money from these affiliate links. That's not really, for me at least, that hasn't been a big income source. But it's helpful to give them a link to click on to go see the thing that you're talking about and maybe potentially buy it. And while you're giving them that link, it might as well potentially give you a little bit of a kickback. Depending on your niche, maybe the stuff that you need in your niche is several $1,000s. So even a handful of sales could bring in a decent chunk of change back to you. That's worth looking into. One of the things you want to keep in mind when creating this content. So for me, the big categories are things like the computer itself. Aside from a few exceptions, generally speaking, anyone wanting to record and create music today needs a computer. Chances are they already have one, but we need to talk through what the computer needs to have, some of the bare minimums for that. So that's maybe one category. A microphone. There are lots of different microphones. If you've even researched microphones for creating your own YouTube videos, you realize there's a lot out there. I'm in the music and audio space, and I could recommend a new microphone every day and never run out. So there are a lot out there. So it helps to be able to say, hey, here are the broad category, here are microphones, here are the 3 main types of microphones, here's the one type that I would recommend, or here's kind of one recommendation from each group. You start to you're demonstrating your expertise, but you're also giving them real practical information of what you like and why you like it. In a kind of a side note to this, in addition to giving them specific advice and specific pieces of equipment that they need, you're also teaching them how to think about this stuff, because equipment will always be a part of their journey, whatever craft they're doing, whatever activity they're doing. So if they can learn from you which pieces to buy now, but also how to think about this moving forward, that's really valuable for them. I'm in a space where a lot of people get really hung up on buying equipment and software to solve their problems, when a lot of times the problem is themselves and their skill level, and the software never will solve that. So you may think, well, if you're kind of in that position, why would you recommend equipment? Well, we all need equipment, right? I can't do this without a microphone. So I'm going to help people figure out what microphone to get, how to think through that decision process. But also I'm going to say, hey, by the way, you can have the best microphone in the world and still make really crappy music if you don't do X, Y, and Z when you get that microphone. So I'm setting myself up as the expert to help them once they get all this equipment and they realize, oh, I don't know what to do next, or what are the best practices, or how do I approach this specific problem? You are the person to solve that. And you're even sowing the seeds. I don't know what is this, the sowing seeds motion. You're sowing seeds of, hey, I'm going to tell you what to get, but then I'm going to be here to help you figure out how to make all of that work. That was the impetus for me starting my business all those years ago. I was selling musical equipment over the phone, so I was a sales dude, and people would buy it. I would give them recommendations. Then they would open it, plug it in, and realize, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what the best, how do I go about recording an acoustic guitar, for example? So they would call me up, and I realized I got to create some resources for these people, hence Home Studio Corner. It came literally from a place of selling and talking about gear to teaching them how to use the gear. So in this instance, unless you're selling physical products, the stuff you're sharing here is just wonderful free content that gives them what they need to get started, and then hopefully sows the seeds of needing to come back to you to help them figure out how to make it all work. It's a beautiful kind of symbiotic relationship here. Now, here's something that you got to keep in mind when you're doing this. You're going to give them specifics, but I want you, and this may be hard for you, especially if you're early on in this process, and if you don't love things like confrontation, you got to do this, or it's going to make the content fall flat and feel super weak. You must be decisive. I see it all the time. Content creators who will say, they won't come up and just say, this is the thing I recommend. They'll say, I really like this, but you don't have to get that. You could get X, Y, or Z, but this A is really what I love. But you don't have to get it. I don't want you to feel like I'm telling you what to do. You can really, any of these will do. And it becomes this. Let me tell you a story. So I'm a musician and a songwriter, and I've played a lot of songwriter nights. Right? Whether it's playing like the famous Bluebird Cafe here in Nashville or just little songwriter nights at a Corky's barbecue. Like I've done all that type of stuff. Open mics versus like a songwriter night with featured songwriters, all that kind of stuff. And there's this thing that a lot of songwriters do that annoys the crap out of me. They get ready to play their song. And sometimes at those songwriter nights, they'll tell you a little bit of the story behind the song. That's always nice. Depending on the venue, that's expected. Let's hear a little bit behind the song. But what annoys me is when they start giving disclaimers. So they'll say things like, hi, I just wrote this song, and so I don't know if I'm going to remember all of the chords and how it goes, so bear with me. This is a new song. I've never played it in front of anyone before. I don't know why that person sounds like that, but that's how it grates on me because they're giving all these disclaimers. People just want to hear your song. They don't need to know that you're going to mess it up. They don't need you to like throw out all these disclaimers so that if you mess up, they're no longer angry at. I'm angry at you when you give me lots of disclaimers. I want you to say, this is what you do. And that's what your content, that's what your audience wants out of your content. When they come to you and they're like, I like this person, I like what they're doing, what equipment do they recommend? They want you to say, this is what you should, I almost said it right there. I almost said, this is what I think you should get. I try to remove phrases like I think out of my videos, out of my written content for sure. It still sneaks in there, but you say, this is what I use, this is what I recommend, here's why. Don't leave it open-ended. Try to make it as concise and decisive as possible. You will get, the world being what it is, you will get people who say, well, how come you didn't mention this? Like in my world audio, there's probably at least a dozen, probably closer to 24 different companies that make recording software. I happen to like one specific one. And if I list a handful of software that people can buy, inevitably someone will say, well, what about this one over here? And I'll say, what about it? I don't use it. I got nothing against it, but I'm not going to sit here and list every possible option that you could possibly ever get. Why? Because it doesn't serve you. If you're the kind of person who likes to analyze too much and I give you a list of 24 different pieces of software to go check out, you're going to spend the next 6 months researching software and maybe buying a couple of them and never actually making any music. That's the same thing in your niche. You want to give them just what they need without giving them a lot of other. You're really trying to focus them. They're like this 4-year-old who just won't focus. Hey, look at me, listen. This is what you need. Go get it and be done. There's a decisiveness there that the world craves. I've found this in like recording studio environments where if I'm the producer and I'm kind of the boss of the session, or if I'm playing a live show and leading a band, if I don't lead that band, things don't go well. The band does not like it. So if I'm up there saying, what do you guys think? You like this or like this? What do you think about this? If I'm asking them 1,000 questions about how we're going to do a particular song, they get real annoyed. Why? Because they're not in charge. They're not the leader. They want to be led. And when they're led, they play amazingly. So like I've got a friend who has toured with like major country acts out of Nashville. And he still, when he works on sessions with little old me, he still wants me to coach him through what he's doing. Now, not to tell him, play this note and then this note, but to say, hey, this is what I envisioned for this, kind of this sort of a vibe. I'd love for you to play loudly on this verse, drop back out for the first part of this chorus, and then let's build up out of the bridge coming into the final chorus. That kind of thing. And then when he plays something, he'll say, is that what you want? And I'll say, no, that's not the vibe I want. Can you try something else? And it's not like, oh, I've offended him. He's trying to find it. I'm trying to find it. And we're trying to find it together. And even more so in this position you find yourself where you are speaking with authority, even if you don't feel like you have authority, you do, because you already know what you're about to say. You know what they need. Just tell them what they need. Be decisive. Say, this is what you need. Go get it. And then come back and I'll teach you how to use it. It's a powerful thing. A decisiveness, saying something without equivocating, without giving disclaimers, is a powerful skill to develop. You won't get it right the first time, but hopefully you'll have little me on your shoulder saying, don't say, I think you should. Just say, here's what I recommend. Go get this. You'll start to notice this now when you watch other content creators. When they tell you something decisively, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. You think, oh, okay, great. Because as soon as it's almost like an old sales technique. If you call me up when I worked at that company to buy, let's say you come up to me to buy a car and you say, I'm thinking I want this specific model. And I say, that's a good one, but have you checked out these 6 other models? Guess what? I'm not buying a car that day, right? If you show me the model I want and it is actually what's good for me, I'm probably going to buy a car. But if you go and just clutter my mind with 6 other models in the hopes of feeling like you're being helpful, you're not. You could maybe show me one alternative, but showing me a bunch just makes me think, okay, I got to just stop and go research, which is, nobody wants to research. We think we like to go research. We don't. We want to buy the thing and we want to do the thing that the thing is designed to do, right? I want to be driving in my new car. I want to be recording that song. I don't want to spend all weekend researching cars or microphones. I just want to do the thing. So help people do the thing. Now, here's where it gets fun. Let's say you've got your list of 5 necessities and you've got your script and you've kind of made your 5 videos. So maybe it's a weekly video, or maybe you space them out. Maybe that's not the next 5 videos that you make because maybe you've got some other ideas that you want to do, but you're making these, it's a series that kind of somewhat go together. They can stand alone, but they ideally go together. Once you do that, when you make the very first video, you can create a playlist in YouTube for that content. So I've got a playlist for my 12 home studio necessities. I think I've got one for 5 home studio necessities. I'm not sure. And within that playlist, at the end of every video, you can say, to see all my recommendations, check out this playlist. And you can use an end card on YouTube or just a link in the description to go to that playlist and to see the full content. That's handy because you can do that in the first video. And then when the second video and the third videos come out, you add them to the playlist, and people who find that content later will still be able to see everything. Really easy way to do that. But here's what's even cooler. So you've created a playlist, which playlists are great. YouTube likes playlists, especially when they go together, because somebody gets kind of on a kick of watching the first video. YouTube will just send them to the next one and the next one. It's great for watch time, great for retention. So I'm not saying everything needs to be a series on a playlist, but something like this absolutely does and can really help with your stats, help you with discoverability, all that stuff. So once you've done that, once you've made that final video, guess what? You're now just a day away from creating a new lead magnet. So what's a lead magnet? Part of my overall business model, the front end for me is YouTube. The back end is email marketing, having an email list. The purpose of YouTube is to serve an audience, to give a lot of value. And the ask on YouTube, primarily for me, is to come sign up for my email list. Why? Not just because I asked you nicely, but because I've got a gift for you, a free gift for signing up for my email list. Guess what? You've already created the 5 videos. You've already done a lot of the work. You can now give them a PDF version of what you've created in those videos. So if you created 5 woodworking necessities, now you can take all that content, all those ideas, and summarize them into a fairly short PDF with all the affiliate links that you had for all the products that you listed in each video, and it's all in one place. You could even link to the videos if you want more of a in-depth kind of, if you want to learn more about this, watch this video and link back to the video on YouTube if you want. But this becomes an easy way, if you don't have a lead magnet, to have your very first lead magnet. Now, what does that mean? That means when you down the road, let's say you've created these videos and a month later you make a video and you happen to mention this microphone that you like. You can say at the end of the video or somewhere in the middle, by the way, if you want to hear my full recommendations for the 5 things that you absolutely need to get started with your niche, go here, go to your website, and enter your email address to get my free guide. Now, you may say, the very first question you're going to say is, but they already have access to that on YouTube. Why would they go download the free guide? Because no one's paying as close attention to you as you think they are. They may know about the 5 steps, but it's also, they may know about the 5 videos, but they're not going to have those videos saved all the time. They're not going to go find your site and go to the 5 playlist and watch they might watch them once, but then if you give them ideally a kind of a short and sweet, something they could even print out as a reference while they're going to the store to shop for the stuff. Maybe it's a checklist, or if it has links that they can click on to go find them all online, that's really handy. Because the first video you make on the first essential, the first necessity, that's wonderful, but it only has links for that thing. They need all 5, right, to really get started. So consolidating all of that into a master list is really wonderful. Here's an example of, here's a 1-page one that I've created. This is just a checklist to help them think through like the recording process and like, okay, I've recorded some stuff. What do I record next? Here is my 5 home studio necessities that I created. So I've got them just linked out here. It's a paragraph or 2 for each. This one's maybe a little more long-winded, but I feel like that's okay because this is something that beginners are going to be getting into more than anybody. So it's got, pictures of some of the gear here and links that they can click and they can go get that piece of equipment. Is a great service to them. And you can link back to the videos you've made on this, but this becomes its own independent resource. By the way, there's nothing new under the sun. So when you're creating content, I like to think of it this way. Russell Brunson was the first person to say this that made a lot of sense for me. If you look at the business models of a lot of big companies doing information marketing, which is what we're doing, a lot of them, they start with a book, right? They have a book at Amazon, and that book kind of lays out their framework, their way of thinking about business or the world. Then they usually have some sort of a course. That course is just what was in that book, just expanded out a little bit. A little more detail, a little more examples, a place to interact and maybe ask questions. It dives into the things that you just can't quite cover in a book, right? It's a different medium. There's more opportunity there. There's maybe downloads and just there's more there. And then they may have a membership, which is ongoing, where you can interact with other people and get questions and make connections and get ongoing content about some of the pieces that maybe the book didn't answer and the course didn't quite answer, and maybe even feedback on what you're doing, right? And then there's things like coaching and masterminds, and it goes all the way up and up. But even at the top level, if someone has a $50,000, one-on-one mastermind kind of thing, they're still teaching the same concepts they taught in the book. Does that make them a ripoff? No, it just means the concept is, the principle works in book form, in a short video, in a short PDF, in a 3-hour course, in a 20-hour course, in a year-long program, in a one-on-one 12-month mastermind. It's all the same content. You're just expanding it out more and customizing it more for the audience. So the fact that you made a video about a topic does not mean you cannot make more content about that topic or another video about that topic. I mentioned I had 12 home studio necessities. Then eventually I thought, let's shorten that down to just 5. So I redid everything, and now this is my current thing. When you can't find the 12 home studio necessities PDF that I made all those years ago. It's now this. This is at homestudiocorner.com/gear if you want to check this out. But now it is a resource. It is an asset that I now have in my back pocket to promote. Anytime I have some content that talks about equipment, this can be the thing that I talk about that gets them into my world and into my email list. One thing to keep in mind, this will not be, most likely, I could be wrong, but for me, this won't be the most popular of your lead magnets. People typically, this is for that group of people who are just getting started. For everyone who's already gotten started, who discovered you later, this may not be as popular, but it'll be just another way to get some leads. You'll probably find that lead magnets that teach them how to do a specific task, solve a specific problem, accomplish a specific thing will perform better. But this is a great way, like I said, to get some momentum, to get some content out there, and to create your lead magnet. So if you don't have a lead magnet, then I've just decided it for you. You're going to create a video for each category. You're going to have some affiliate links. Then as you're creating it, you're going to fill out a document that turns into something like this that they can then sign up and download, and everything is well with the world. Finally, If you are thinking about this and you're like, this all sounds well and good, Joe, but I actually don't know who my niche is yet. I made a video on that, how to find your niche and some ways to think about that, things to avoid and things to make sure that you pay attention to. You can check that out by watching this video here. Also, if you want to learn my full business model, I've got a masterclass that draws the entire model on a sheet of paper. You can have that for free. Just go to joegilder.biz/game. Thanks for watching. See ya.